Dr. Ivy, will you confirm the record of attendance?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, you are present. Ms. Chandler, Vice Chairwoman, is physically present. Ms. Davis is joining by phone. Ms. Douglas is not with us today and sends her regards, as well as Ms. Harrelson. We have a member of the committee present.
This meeting is now called to order. Thank you all for being here today and your continued commitment to our work. I will provide the invitation. Dear God, thank you for this day. Thank you for this team of people. Thank you for Liberty City Charter School and the scholars that you've allowed us to serve. I just pray that all of our conversations today center around them. In your name we pray, amen. All right, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Chandler, would you read the mission statement?
Liberty City Charter works to provide all students with equal access to a world-class K-12 education in an academically rigorous and student-centered learning environment, creating graduates who will be thoughtful and engaged citizens prepared to take on the leadership challenges of the 21st century.
I'll read the mission statement. In partnership with our families and the community, our vision is to provide real-world, interdisciplinary, personalized, and project-based learning experiences through a STEAM-based academic program where graduates become the next generation of leaders, employers, and employees who contribute to the economic well-being of their communities and families. If there are no objections to approval of the consent agenda, the minutes from the previous meeting and today's meeting agenda stand approved. Dr. Ivy, please proceed with leading the discussion and advancing the agenda items for today's meeting.
All right, Madam Chairwoman, following up from our Connect, we have prioritized 3 buckets of collaboration, discussion, and cascading of new information to you, all under the jurisdiction of this committee. Dr. McDonald, the staff liaison, is present to give her recurring updates, really centering around what's new with our pursuit of COGNI accreditation, what our look-fors in the future of transformational coaching, and then we're going to go into an update on where we stand with the Academy Best Practices Task Force. We do have some updates and some recommendations that are going to be falling throughout the meeting from various staff members. And then we're going to take a deep dive into, hard to believe, the middle of the year data. And so both of our DCIs, our Deans of Curriculum and Instruction, are with us today. Ms. Smiling from primary and Ms. Hatfield on her way from elementary and junior, so that we can take a look at our scholar achievement data, and then also going into all of our organizational goals and where we are, but more importantly, what are the next steps we're going to take to either maintain that momentum or conduct a root cause analysis to pivot and make changes. And so that's what we have in store for this meeting today. And if there's no further information, I will turn it over to Dr. McDonald, who is going to share out first.
If I may, first I would like to share out the information from our committee about our best practices for grading and homework. So if you will, we have access to policies and think were shared on Board on Track. These are recommendations that we would like to share with you in preparation for presenting to our board. So with our policy updates, these are the pages that we have changes. We have some revisions, recommendations for 2nd through 5th, but we also need to add what grading policy and homework will look like at our middle school level, as next year we're preparing to start with 6th grade.
And so, Ms. Chandler, just so that you know, as you go into governance, as you have asked, any changes to the existing policy documents have been highlighted in yellow. And so Dr. McDonald has continued with that suggestion so that you can discern very clearly what are we proposing for new acceptance.
So the first step we're looking at our middle level grading policy procedures on page 14. And with that, we did administer surveys to our parents as well as to our teachers, and then sharing, looking at our surveys with our teachers, we thought that our responses was very clear in what they wanted. And then when we went back to review the data at the end of last week, we saw where there were some very close areas for what they wanted. So what we did was we created another survey just to address those particular questions, and we resubmitted it to the core content teachers in grades 2 through 5, because that was the academy that where the choices became a little murky. So in our initial survey, we had it where they could choose all the ones that applied for them, but then on our second one, we did a multiple choice so they could only choose one, because what we found was several of them didn't really have a clear decision of what direction they wanted to go in, so they chose 2 or 3 areas. So with that said, here I'm presenting.
What page is that?
It's page 14.
It seemed like it lines up here. 14 is blank for some
You
reason.
go down. I'm sorry, go up. Yes, right, go. There, right there.
Okay.
So here, the question was, what do we want to do about middle school grading, our grade floor? And so on here, we want our policy recommendation is scholars at LSC grades 6 through 12 will receive the grade that is earned on each assessment. And based on both of our surveys with teachers and with parents, we have an overwhelming response in support of that recommendation. And on our policy, you will see that the strikeouts are things that were there that we're removing, and as I said, the yellow highlights is what we want to add. We're taking out the physical education dressing out part because we will not have a dressing room for middle school next year for 6th grade. So for now, we're removing that part from our policy. The next part we wanted to talk about was reteach, retake, grade ceiling, and that's on page 13. And we're asking for no changes. There was a question about what do we do about reteach, retake, because our current policy supports that the scholars on a major assessment, if they score a 60 or below, they are required to retake the assessment. And in doing so, the original assessment grade versus the reassessment grade, the higher of the 2 scores will be kept but not to exceed the policy, a passing grade of 60. And so we wanted to know, do we want to continue with that of keeping a passing grade of 60 if you retake, or we wanted a higher grade as a possibility, because if you've done the reteach and the retake. But the overwhelming response right now is to keep it as a 60, so the recommendation is no change unless there are questions or other feedback from the students. The next thing we wanted to address was homework philosophy for parents. Homework philosophy, and the first response I wanted to share was from parents. They had 3 options on the survey, and it was for homework to be eliminated for grades K through 5. For homework should be given and graded in grades 6 through 8, and then should homework be optional. So at this point, we have 127 parents respond with 59.3% saying homework should be optional. And our homework policy is on page 14. Yes. So the top 2 choices was for homework. Homework should still be given to all grade levels, but optional. And then homework should be given and graded in grades 6 through 8. That's the parents' response. When we talk to teachers about what homework should look like at the kindergarten 1st grade level, on pages 7 and 8 in the manual. Kindergarten 1st grade teachers were in preference of having homework. Only 36.2% said no homework, but 59.5% are in favor of homework. 2 of the choices for homework was, do they continue with the calendar homework like what they do now, or do they want to go back to homework packets, which is what they've done in the past. So with 34% choosing calendar homework compared to 25% doing the packet, our recommendation for kindergarten 1st grade is to still do weekly homework sent home on Monday, returned on Friday, with calendar homework designed to reinforce early literacy and numeracy skills. Looking at homework for grades 2nd through 5th. The top two choices for 2nd through 5th was homework for 2nd through 5th should be the million-word reading challenge and fact fluency practice with 46.8%. But then we also have 53% that said homework for 2nd through 5th grade should be an extension of ELA and math lessons taught in class. So at this level, they definitely also want to continue with giving homework, but the question was, what will it look like? And when I dug deeper into the survey, I saw that 9 out of 24 teachers in 2nd through 5th chose both choices. And so to make sure that we have a clear voice from our teachers, like I said, we re-administered the survey only with those two questions. And from that, we have 70.6% in favor of doing homework that is an extension of what they've taught in class. But they've also sent me personal messages saying that they're in favor of either option because sometimes they see a need. So we're recommending that for that policy, homework will extend grade level content taught in class or provide differentiated practice aligned to individual student needs. Assignments may be grade level content or targeted opportunities to build math fact fluency and reinforce essential skills. Homework will be distributed on Monday and returned on Friday with no assignments given over the weekend.
What
So
page is that?
that's page 12. And in our previous policy, homework was already differentiated, but it wasn't specific as into what that differentiation looked like. So we made it a little more specific. Then homework for grades 6 through 8, and as we know, next year will be our first year with grade 6. That's on page 16 in our manual. Our policy recommendation is homework for all subjects combined should not exceed 70 minutes in 6th grade, 80 minutes in 7th grade, and 10 minutes in 8th grade. And that's in following with the practice we already have in place with 10 minutes of homework for kindergarten and adding an additional 10 minutes every grade level beyond that. Graded assignments should be returned to students in a timely manner. Homework will be recorded in Power Teacher Gradebook and be averaged as 10% of the now used grade. This was a recommendation or request from our parents. At the middle school level, they would like to see the grades counted as part, the homework counted as part of the grade to begin holding some accountability there for their scholars. Teachers are in support of it counting as part of the grade, 10%. Homework will be assigned and returned daily with no homework on the weekends. So when we get to middle school level, it's no longer sending it on Monday and returning it on Friday, but it will be returned daily. Policy updates, revisions, and edits. These are the pages where we've made some changes. So in kindergarten, grade 1, pages 7 through 8. Here, the highlight, you want the right page. Here for the highlighted piece, we've added, because our previous policy didn't specify what homework looks like at the kindergarten level. So on page 7, we added the statement, kindergarten students will receive weekly calendar homework designed to reinforce early literacy and numeracy skills. Assignments will be sent home each Monday and returned to school on Friday. On the next page, page 8, we added for homework for, added homework for 1st grade as well. And it says the same thing. 1st grade students will receive weekly calendar homework designed to reinforce early literacy and numeracy skills. Assignments will be sent home on Monday and returned to school. On page 9, we just needed to add in some assessments with our major assessments. We have interim assessments next year. We're planning to begin implementing interim assessments at the end of each quarter to assess the standards that were taught during that quarter. And now this year, we're already beginning to implement common formative assessments. We would like interim assessments to be a part of our major grading. Our next change comes on page 15. On page 15, this is our grading level policies for middle school grades 6 through 8. We are removing so that is page 15. Right there. Yes. So we're removing that statement where it says, while LSC does not serve scholars in these grades, we're removing that because now we will begin to serve scholars in that grade. And at the bottom of that page, at the bottom of page 15, we're removing the dress out physical education option because we do not have a facility space to serve at that area right now as far as dressing out for PE. On the next page, page 16, benchmark interim assessments, we're changing the word benchmark to interim. And instructors, we're adding instructors will use Mastery Connect test item bank to generate interim assessments based on the standards and content taught during the quarter. We're removing the common assessments part. We're still doing common assessments, but common formative assessments. And we're adding core content area teachers will administer assessments on power major standards, which are embedded in the curriculum. These assessments may be teacher created using a Mastery Connect test item bank, a curriculum assessment, or unit test. The grade will be recorded and the reteach, reassess option will be applied. Okay, the next page, I'm sorry, right here, major assessments, project coordination. Core content instructors will collaborate to develop a grade level assessment project calendar that outlines the dates of major assignments. This coordinated planning ensures students have adequate time, balanced workloads, and meaningful opportunities to be successful. Because we know in middle school, starting next year, they're going to have several teachers. And so in that, we wanted to make sure that we don't have 2 or 3 teachers planning to have a major assessment on the same day, or that we don't have 2 or 3 projects due at the same time, because it will be the same scholars but with different teachers. So in order to kind of plan that out so that students can be successful, the core content teachers will make a calendar for their grade level with their dates for their expected projects and major assessments. Okay, at the middle school, what homework for all subjects combined should not exceed 70 minutes in 6th grade, 80 minutes in 7th grade, 90 minutes in 8th grade. Homework will be assigned and returned daily, but no homework on the weekends. Those are our recommended additions. Then we're going to our appendix A on page 24. And this is the administrative rule grading assessment system. So those recommendations that we've just shared with you in the best practice manual, we have updated the policy to show those changes. Over on page 32, when we get to homework policy. The yellow highlights are the changes. Homework can serve as a structured opportunity for students to practice essential foundational skills that support long-term academic success through consistent reinforcement of these core skills. Students strengthen the building blocks necessary for future learning and deepen their readiness for increasing complex contexts. But when we move into the next paragraph, there are some things we're taking out, which shows the strike through, and some things we're recommending to add to align to the new practice we would like to implement. In the bulleted parts, we've just added some other words to kind of show that for differentiation purposes, if they decide they needed to do fact fluency instead of the content, it still addresses what our purposes are. And if I could elaborate for a minute, the thought behind the differentiated homework is what we're learning now is when our scholars get to the 4th grade level and they begin doing multiplication and division with multiple digit numbers, they're really having a difficult time. And some of our scholars who did really well in K2 in math, they get to 4th grade and they begin to have more of a struggle because the math fact fluency is not as fluent as it needs to be. And so when you're trying to multiply and divide multi-digits and you're still counting on your fingers, that slows you down and it could create inaccuracy. So in the earlier grade levels, we are offering a differentiated opportunity where for homework, maybe they focus on fact fluency for the ones that need it, and then the ones who don't need it as much, maybe their homework could look like a core content area, or it could be vice versa as needed. And then we talked about what the amount of minutes would be for homework for middle school level. The next thing we want to look at on page 33 is our promotion and retention of students. There is a policy there. The only thing we're adding to the bulleted area that addresses the specific criteria to define promotion is the read to succeed requirements, because we noticed that was not in the previous one, so we wanted to make that update. On the next page, page 34, the only changes we're making is changing the grade level to show 3 through 8 instead of 3 through 5. And then we updated the multilingual learners assessment, the name of it. And then if you scroll a little more, at the bottom when it says announcement or promotion and doubt retention, we removed some of the wording and to try to clarify and make it a little clearer to understand what the process looks like at Liberty. So at Liberty, when there's promotion and doubt, families are notified in writing of possible retention with a promotion and doubt letter. The teacher and parent hold an initial promotion and doubt conference that set goals for the scholar. The conference is documented with a signed agenda. If the student does not demonstrate improvement by June of the school year, they are identified for retention for the following school year. Retention meetings are scheduled for the families to meet the LSC administration in June. The last retention scale must be completed for all scholars whose promotion is still in doubt in late April. Also, in accordance with the Read to Succeed legislation, parents of third grade students not reading on grade level will be notified at the end of the second quarter.
So is the promotion and doubt, that's applicable to all scholars?
Yes.
And then the reading requirement is specific to our third grade scholars?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's my understanding that this year may also be applicable to first grade.
Oh, okay.
Make some changes. Those are the end of our recommendations for changes. Oh, and here too, in the Read to Succeed, these are the assessments that are approved by the state as alternate assessments. So for our third grade scholars, if they take SC Ready and they do not meet the cut and they're recommended for retention, we can look at our map data, and if they score a certain criteria on our map data according to this 186, which was on what was on the state's document, then it could be used as an alternative assessment to say they can still be promoted to the fourth grade. But it's also recommended that they still attend our school.
So, I wanted to say thank you to Dr. McDonald for taking the lead on cleaning up this manual. I felt it was very important to bring this to you all before our June meeting, which is when we do all of our regular policy updates, just because there's some changes that are going to be in effect a little bit sooner than what we would be typically seeing. And so this is being presented for information today, and it'll be presented as information at the Monday meeting, and in accordance with best practices, we would be recommending final approval of this for the March meeting because it is a policy update. One thing just to kind of keep in mind, because this, hard to believe it was 3 years ago when we first put this manual in place, and it really caused great conversation among members of the board at that time, specifically with the grading board. And so homework is pretty much staying the same as per se, really leaning into teacher voice, just to recap, but clarifying what the actual assignment is supposed to be about, right? tying it to a need. For our grading breakdown, Sumter School District has the 10% penalty for homework. It's part of their threshold. And so we will be in alignment with Sumter School District now for middle grades and eventually high school grades for there being some sort of attachment to the child's grade for homework. Then you've got the changes for the CFAs and the IAs. Remember, that's tied to one of the 3 big recommendations from Charles Growth Fund. So we've already moved forward with that. In fact, the CFA window opened today. Michelle is leading the effort with Rashira and Emily, which is really led by the teachers on CFAs with Master Connect. And next year, we will be adding in interim assessments. So high-level CFAs are really teacher-controlled, right? Then as a network, we would be taking a thermometer check once a quarter with a network-created IA assessment that the DCIs would be really building to make sure we're comparing apples to apples.
There's a lot of acronyms in there.
There is,
Yeah.
yep. The CFA is many times, or more than a couple times, and the IA is just once a quarter. So think of it as a mini test, and then we got a big test. And we want the big test to be rigorous and tightly controlled, so that we are really able to compare, one kindergarten class to another kindergarten class like that. Now, one thing I don't know, Ms. Knopf, you may be able to speak a little bit more about, just to make sure that we are presenting the accurate information for Sumter School District, because there has been a change in their grading ceiling. Kinder through 5th grading ceiling will stay the same. So the highest grade, so business as usual, the highest grade is a 60, 50, that would be in the grade book, thank you. For middle school, it is what the scholar earns. And so I don't think that is the case for currently for middle and high school. So I just want to make sure that it's, because I remember that being a great conversation. I don't think it is. We can take the action step to just make sure, but they reversed it under the new board. And so I do want to make sure that we're making sure that we explain that our grading policy errs what we believe on the side of the scholar's best interest to teach the core values, growth mindset, kinder through 5th. But hey, you've had 6 years of growth mindset. We are really going to push that reteach and retake, because we have not done a lot with that reteach and retake. And then by the time the scholar transitions to 6th grade, they know those expectations, and there is no safeguard, if you will, that is going to give the child a buffer. DCIs are with us. They were a part of the conversations, and anything that y'all would like to add, just so that Ms. Chandler, Ms. Knopf, Ms. Davis have accurate information from the ground up, the trenches up.
Did you cover that well? Our teachers are getting ready to get their first CFAs and Master Connects all set up, so they have until the end of next week to get the first ones done, so we'll have some schools to do that and take a look at.
And the CFAs is, when we unrolled that is the presentation you came to. The day we did the data dissections and, at the mall campus with our subgroup gaps, and it just worked out very well that we were able to pivot, and so no more progress monitoring for gen ed scholars, and progress monitoring now will just be for special population scholars, and Nikki will oversee that, so there will be progress monitored on a regular basis, just as we have been for all gen ed scholars, but now we are implementing the CFAs. So we'll be ready to showcase that data. So the data on the data boards as you go in the classrooms and in the buildings would be different. That number will not be the progress monitoring. That will be the teacher-created common formative assessment that was vetted by Rashira or Emily for rigor and implemented an easy score, not taking papers on the grade kind of thing.
It is based on our South Carolina College Career Ready Standards. It says the item bank questions similar to what they would see on state assessment.
We're developing the same thing for science or,
Yes.
And in fact, they've already administered science guidance has already been administered for their CFA.
There's a formula that should help to create it as like how many questions they can have and then how many, the percentage of each type of like DOK, so like levels of questioning, so.
We want some of them LSAT questions in there. We want a few of them, right? We want some recall, right? We want some recall.
Age appropriate questions, yes.
That's right. Yeah. But we want to make sure that the data that we're presenting is reflective of SC ready. We don't want there to be surprises. But the big good thing about CFAs is, being able to look at, okay, if it's a 10-question assessment, wow, question 8 was missed. That is a misconception in more than one classroom. We need to reteach. We need to go back to the drawing board on that. And so I think that'll be, and at a very high level, the DCI will know that very quickly. The DCI can go into the platform, see the status of the assessments, and so we're excited to move forward with that.
And then my updates for transformational coaching in Cognia. For transformational coaching starting next week, I'm going to step in at the elementary academy 2 days a week to be a coach for 2nd and 3rd grade, with one of our coaches stepping into a classroom role to support in that area. We did not want there to be a gap for those teachers to not have received that support, so I'm going to step in and be a support for them, not on the network level, but as a school level coach for 2nd and 3rd, and those days will be on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So all day on Tuesday and Wednesday, I will be at the EA campus, but I will be at network on Monday, Thursday, Friday. All the things that I was doing at network, I will continue to do. I'm still going to facilitate content to ensure that we have a successful administration of it and achieve accreditation. I'm still going to be responsible for LEA with our evaluation systems. I'm going to continue to do our PDs on Friday. We'll still have our menu choice one Friday and our PD pathways one Friday. I will still continue to facilitate our letters training for volumes 1 and 2 to ensure that our teachers get that training that they need. I'm still going to do our data and all of that stuff. I'm just adding to it the support level coaching for 2nd and 3rd grade. The one change that will happen now, instead of having lead and for coaches, I will not have the monthly meeting with them anymore, just because of the time, but I will be available. So now my support day at the PA, I'm taking that away, but instead, Ms. Smiling, Ms. Smith, and I will have our connect once a week. So on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock is our designated time, and during that time, we'll give Rebecca support. Rebecca told me what we're working on, if there are any challenges, how I can support, and then if there is a need for me to go over and help, I will be available to do that. But instead of offering that one day a year, I think right now our greater need is to make sure that we're providing support for those 2 grade levels. And then with Cognia, we are on track to being ready for our visit in March. I have a meeting scheduled with our coach this week where I will provide our first set of narratives and evidence for feedback. And based on that feedback, we will move on to the next part, make any corrections that are recommended and suggested, and we will be ready.
So after Monday's big board meeting, the big board will not meet again until March. And so we hope to have exciting news, and particularly for our 5th grade families that we know are going to be college bound. Of course, Cognia is going to provide that continual roadmap for improvement, but knowing that 100 of our scholars at our law campus, 40-ish of them at the 5th grade level or exceeds 35 to 40-ish, depending on the subject. That's almost nearly a third. And so, again, the USC honors colleges of the world, Harvard, Yale, they're not going to look at these scholars' transcripts without a accreditation from a reputable body. And so, very excited. And we've already confirmed our STEM accreditation visit for next year. All right, ready to move into data? Deep dive on data. All right. We, with Dr. Donald, want to start with PA? All right, PA, here we go. Lisa Wang from finishing up her 5th year at Liberty. Looks like Ms. Hatfield is here. And she has a handout, and we have the mid-year data one-pagers coming to you. As has been requested, we do have the one-page handout for each class, so you'll be able to zoom in on each class. You have EAs, I have PAs coming to us, and so Ms. Smiling is ready.
So pretty much we did see a lot of growth overall. We did move from 53.3% overall in reading to 62%. And then for math, we moved from 61.3% to 74%. We also did see a shrink in our CSI, so from reading, we went from 37.6% to 26%. And then in math, from 35% to 19%. There were 3 classrooms that we did see a dip, but they did not make growth. It went backwards. So Ms. Smith and I are kind of tag teaming those classrooms a little bit and just making sure that we are meeting the needs of those classrooms, but also not just meeting the needs of them, but also staying on top of the ones that we've already done a lot of the work in, because we don't want them to also fall back and continue to make the growth. So our action steps going from winter to spring, I kind of broke it down from kinder reading, kinder math, first reading, first math, because they kind of need different things. In kinder for reading, we're still focusing on that daily phonics instruction, making sure that those small groups are happening, but also to like beef it up. So not just that they're happening, but that they're happening at a high level and it's differentiated to meet the needs of all the scholars. And then making sure that we are inspecting what's actually happening during that HMH club with the structured literacy practice. There was a lot of pushback at the beginning of the year about structured literacy and saying, I don't think this is gonna work. Finally got them to buy into the idea. They saw their scores raise and they're like, no, it does work. We're trying to tell you, just stay on. But it's now just going in there to make sure it's still happening so that they're not like sliding back and trying to use something else, but using what is already working. And then we do have some kindergarten scholars who are ready to read, so just transitioning them into books where we're focusing now on comprehension for them and not necessarily just reading books to make sure that they can do it. In math, again, it's the same thing with the differentiation of the small groups, but also making sure that they are constantly using those manipulatives because they're still building that concrete understanding of numbers. And then making sure that in those teacher-led stations that we're not just jumping to abstract learning, that they're starting with concrete, like with manipulatives, then moving on to pictorial, and then moving on to the abstract way of doing math. First grade reading, still having those structured small groups, but also for them, since they're piloting the iReady, to really utilize those lessons that they are provided with in that small groups teacher-led station. So not only just looking at the data, but also seeing what is the system telling us that they need to work on and pulling those lessons to do it with the small group of scholars. Same thing for math, using iReady, and then also those small groups, but still for them, they need to be using those manipulatives as well. The last action step is the CFAs, or the common formative assessments, and Dr. Young did a beautiful job of explaining that, so I'm gonna stick with it. Below is the coaching impact, so we're still in those coaching cycles. A lot of it is like the daily phonics instruction, just making sure that structured literacy is happening, but also writing is always a weak spot for us. So really just trying to make sure that we're now past like the labels and into sentences. So now it's that last stretch of moving sentences to like stories and paragraphs and things like that. And then in first grade, Ms. Smith is very well versed in iReady, so her coaching is really going to center around a lot of the iReady piece. For both grade levels, we're still doing the POCs. We're really looking at CSI progression of scholars, even though progress monitoring has fallen out for teachers to do. A lot of our teachers have chosen to continue to do progress monitoring for their scholars that are a little below or the ones that they're thinking may want to be retained. And then we're still coaching on co-teacher consistency, just making sure that we're utilizing the second person in the classroom at a high level. Eureka Squared is new curriculum, so we're making sure that that's being implemented at a high level, and then just monitoring and adjusting as we need. And then if you flip over that, term, the goal that we had was at least to get 75% of scholars to be proficient in reading and math. We did miss the goal for that by 13%, and then we only missed it in math by 1%, so we were really close. And then for 50% of CSI to meet their winter goal, we exceeded that by 10% in reading, and then exceeded that by 30% in math. So we're on the right track. There are some little things that we still have to do and monitor, but overall, I think we're in a pretty good place. But we don't want to get so excited that we get blinded by the bigger goal that's coming up. So yes, we're excited, but we still know that there's things to be done.
Yeah, when you really dive in, and each DCI prepared a one-pager by class. And so, I want to give a shout out to Rashira, just in messaging from afar. All right, I see, what are we doing with these 3 classes? Because when you look, there are 3 classes that show the dip. They've already started intense coaching cycles, and that's what we got to do, right? That's the idea of transformational coaching, is we follow the data. And so they've already, I'm hearing today, Valerie is going to really focus on that iReady. So I love hearing adapting by talent, Rashira focusing on the momentum, keeping the momentum going, because the dip is first grade. And so love your one-pager, but the students should be very proud of the CSI gaps. That is a huge win. Clearly the coaching is working, and the overall increase in proficiency is trending in the right direction.
How much time are we spending on reading on a daily basis?
Basis, it is at least 120 minutes.
Okay. And then additional support or help is available for small groups or whatever we're trying to do.
So small groups is built into that time.
Okay.
And that takes, they usually do small groups for about 45 minutes of that time block. The rest of it is that reading whole instruction as well as the structure of the receiving instruction. And then they break into their small groups,
Okay.
the differentiated instruction.
Any questions for DCI Smiley? We're going to pivot to EA. EA has their data as well, and then of course we wanted to give our governance committee chair an update on some of the funding that has been provided from Williams-Brice, on how we are pivoting to streamline our retired use, our teachers that are retired, the use of those teachers for intervention. And Emily's going to focus her presentation on that. All right, Ms. Hatfield.
Good morning. Yes, and today was the first day, so I left, I was a little nervous, but I think everything's going well. So, we'll jump right in. The first slide is of,
Is this your presentation?
it's the Canva.
Okay. The Eagle Advantage?
Yes. Yeah. So, overall, really good growth. It includes reading, math, and language for all subjects. And the one area, when you look at it, that had a dip, all increased, but there was a dip, 4th grade, specifically math. That was the area that stuck out the most to me. It dropped a few percentage points. I believe there are a couple of factors in that. One of those is that we had a teacher that was out the entire week at math testing for the flu, and he's responsible for teaching 2 sets of classes. That may not account for all of it, but we perform best when our teacher, just to have the structure. Even though we had great people in there, it's not the same as having your teacher that you test with. So that represented a large portion, and actually the teachers out during the math day. So I think that had a good bit to do with it, but also one is a first-year teacher, did a great job, but you know what it's like being a first-year teacher. So got some supports in place that we'll talk about when we get to the next slides. CSI, we did meet that goal, it's 50%, so in reading and math, we are above that in every single grade, except for second math, but close. And then our growth targets, you can see those there for reading, math, and language. Not quite to 70% meeting, but close. It's again that math in fourth grade, it trends all the way across. Any questions on that? I do want to follow up with some Read to Succeed updates. So for third grade, the legislation has not changed. All that is the same as it has. There's a cut score of 168 that scholars need to meet. But however, this year there is a first grade component. So any scholars not meeting the cut score of 160 in first grade will go to camp, just like our third graders do. I'll look through first grade's data. Right now, there are currently 38 in this category. And there's 45 at our campus that are below the 168. We're right about the same, in the same boat last year this time. You know, we still have half a year to get further. However, not all of those 45 don't have a lifeboat. About half of those have either an IEP or they have been retained before. So any scholars that have one of those good cause exemptions, while they are still invited to summer camp, they are in danger of retention. And then, as Dr. McDonald stated, to get some clarity this year, I think I'm not sure if the language changed or if it was a decision from our district. In years past, if a scholar, let's say that Emily Hatfield scored a 170 on spring map, but then when I took SC Ready, I does not meet. Well, in the past, that meant that I had to go to summer school and I was in danger of retention and had to take the test again at summer school. This year, clarity is that if they have that passing score in spring map, then that counts. So yes, they're still invited, but that counts as their good cause exemption. So, of course, I don't want everybody to have does not meet, so that does kind of give a little more breathing room. Next one. Okay, so the bulk of the presentation is about Eagle Advantage, formerly known as Boot Camp. There's a glance at our teachers that are on staff for that. So we've got our retired teachers, our interventionists are also a part of this program, our enrichment teachers, classroom teachers, and of course, Mr. Vaughn and Ms. Harrison are providing supports to each of them.
I'm sorry, how many retired teachers?
12. There are 12. And our action plan, we restructured intervention groups. So, we have our 4 intervention teachers, Ms. Dirk, Ms. Hickman, Ms. Fuller, and Ms. Huggins. Some of the scholars were in there before. They have exceeded the percentile needed for intervention, which is great. And so we were actually able to go up to the 40th percentile this time. Last semester, some groups were only to 30th and some were to 35th. So we were able to stretch out a little bit farther for those intervention groups. Any scholar that is seasoned interventionist does not see a retired teacher. So these groups are pulled during one of their enrichment blocks. So I wanted to make sure that every scholar gets at least one enrichment block during the day. So they're either going to be served, if they are served, they're either served by an interventionist or by a retired teacher. How are the scholars selected for the retired teachers? Well, that's on the next slide. Some groups are push in and some are pull out. So for second grade, we used map data and teacher input. A lot of those groups are push in. Third grade, our biggest focus was on reading, showing that we have Read to Succeed. So any scholar that is below the cut score or near that cut score is being seen by someone. And then fourth and fifth grade, I really wanted to focus on scholars, so looking at where they were last year on SC Ready and where they are currently now, even though I know we still have half a year. Anybody that has predicted right now is a level lower than where they were last year or on the bubble of that, I want them being served by someone. So they are in a group, whether it's a reading group or a math group. So, and then there's a couple groups that they didn't drop, but they are so close to being at next level, I'll pull them as well. So those kids that are meets but almost exceeds, approaches but almost meets, making sure that they're in a group. So right now, there is right at 230 scholars that are being served by our Eagle Advantage team, those retired teachers that started today, and 130 scholars being served by our interventionists. So a large chunk of our student population is getting extra help of some sort. So it was really hard planning these groups. Ms. Carla and myself spent many hours looking over the schedule and trying to pull kids and trying to figure out, oh, no, we can't do this because they're already being by the interventionists. They're just trying to make the schedule work and really, truly see as many kids as we could. How are we going to track progress? You know, it's important to monitor how they are doing. One, attendance is taken every day. I think that's important so we can keep track of how many times they're being taught. Just when we take that mastery check and every 2 weeks, that's reflected. Most scholars are there every day. There are a couple scholars that I did want to be seen still, but they may be missing one day a week due to speech or OTPT. That just couldn't be avoided, but I still want them to be able to get that help. So scholars are going to take bi-weekly mastery assessments on the skills covered during those 2 weeks. So every other Thursday, they will take a little quick quiz so they can see did they master what was taught, did they need more remediation on that skill, or are they ready to be pushed? And the data that's collected will be reported out in network tactical, so it'll be on the rally cry. And then that was really the end of the presentation, but this morning I walked around and snagged some pictures, so it's not in that slide deck, but I wanted you to be able to see, they were really eager. They didn't have to be there till 8 o'clock this morning, but many were there at 7:30, ready to go. I didn't even really have to tell them what to do. I was out at morning arrival, and so my goal was to like grab a arrival and then come in, and they knew what room to go to, but we have a really, really good group this year. They were on it. They already had their little nameplates out. They were setting up tables, getting their supplies ready to go. With very little direction from me. There were a couple little scheduling snafus, first day weeks you have to work out. But other than that, going very, very well.
And how long will this last?
It'll go right up until we test.
The spring? Okay, so that's gonna be.
We'll probably stop at, we'll stop at map testing because there's a quick turnaround from map to SC Ready this year. So, that's in April. Got a couple, former principals, instructional coaches in this group. Very, very strong team.
Do we have, I know we've been talking about after-school programs and the need for that. I don't know where we stand on that.
Good question. So I can just speak to our campus. We're restructuring that, so you can stay tuned for updates on that. My biggest push was to get this going first.
And I agree, but I'm just wondering if the after-school program will give us another opportunity
I think it will.
to do some reinforcement of what's going on.
What I'm looking at right now, an area that I know Ms. Nine talked about it in her presentation, writing is still an area that we can really focus on. I've kind of been diving into the SC data from last year, looking at those kids who their writing either helped or hurt their overall score. We had some kids who were exceeds on the reading, but the writing kind of knocked them down, so their overall may have been B's instead of exceeds because of that. And there were some where it was the opposite way. So just kind of digging into that, maybe pulling some of those kids. Some of those are already in a reading writing group now, but that's definitely an area that I want to focus on too. And then doing any math. We tried a morning math group this first semester, just trying to think outside the box. Some parents loved it, some did not. It really wasn't a favorite, so probably not going to do the morning group again. But looking just any way that I could pull. It's also a challenge finding teachers that want to do it.
I would say,
to be honest.
Candy, first of all, Ms. Hanson, if we can capture that as an action step, just to make sure that we are making sure that we are getting everybody's input. This is a huge piece where we struggle, because we have a longer school day, and so it is, is it a check in the box, or is it actually meaningful? And it's a huge expense. Tutoring on any campus is around $10,000. A little bit more at the mall campus, because they serve a little bit more children. And so how do we've had conversations about, hey, should we start leveraging Saturday school for what we said in the charter Saturday school was supposed to be for? Which the commitment to excellence says if your scholar is not where they need to be, it is an expectation that they rise to the occasion and that they show up on Saturday to do whatever it takes to get to where they need to be. I can see that being a better bang for our buck.
After school.
But the caveat to that is really triaging who needs it the most, right? And so, the school day's already long, and how do we get the rejuvenation of teachers that are in there that
And I
can
understand.
actually.
And the
Yeah.
scholars too.
And so the equal advantage, the advantage of that is it's during the school day,
Right.
which is
And
the
it's Monday
expectation.
through Thursday,
Yeah.
so tutoring was just, Tuesday and Thursday, and so.
And shout out to Emily, she got a Reflex, a platform that didn't cost the organization any money, so that can be more, personalized. We're talking 6:30 in the morning, right? And so,
And that has shifted to the interventionists, they're still using those licenses now, even though we're not having the early morning group.
But also, I know like in years past, we've used Fridays as the half day as a small group time leading up to testing. So, that would be an option too.
Yes, some of our interventionists are pulling groups, well, actually they are, they're either pushing it or pulling on Fridays. We try to have a specific schedule last year, but the tricky part with that is Fridays are there's so many things that go on Fridays, with, great things, but, CCCs
they're giving up their
and,
lunch break, their lunch break to students, and then they got their straight and cheap.
oh, intervention, you forgot after, I was talking about, but during the day, so it's hard keeping a consistent schedule. But yes, we did do the tutoring after school on Fridays, and again, it was just one day, it's a little bit longer, but yeah, giving them lunch, it's just hard to find, consistent people.
You see a lot of turnaround schools doing a big push on Saturdays, like the 4 weeks before state testing. And so, we all can, are we cramming, right? Are we just teaching to the test? Or do we really look, because by then, we will know who in that retired teachers group it worked and who it still didn't work, and they still have an opportunity to move to that next band. And so, if anything, how do we use our last minute push for the scholars who are gonna give us those growth, because again, our bleed is as scholars get older, right? It's the same thing that we see year after year, but we always push it out at the end. And so how do we really focus on those 4th and 5th grade scholars at the end, right, of who really just hasn't? Another thing you would want to know from this is that 2 of those retired teachers are focused solely on special population scholars, so scholars who have been identified and are currently being served with an IEP. And so they are filling in some gaps on our special population scholars that have been identified that can be moved to that next band. And so Ms. Pack does have 2, and one is actually doing 37.5 hours a week. So one is actually almost a full-time person. Yeah.
And this year the groups were structured a little bit different too. Last year they were kind of, not all over the place, but like, we might have kids from 2 or 3 different classes, because it was based, really kind of deep into the map data. This year, we used the data, but we also kind of grouped it by teacher. So parent teacher. So not only are we gonna focus just on standards that those kids need based on that, but also we'll have data going forward with CFAs coming out, so the teacher can say, hey, can we take a pause from fractions this week, because I noticed when I gave tests, they really struggle with this skill, and can you, so they have more access to the teachers.
And they asked for it, the retired teachers asked for it, right?
They did.
Wanted the connection piece to those teachers. So Emily, I know this is a big, I'm sorry.
So I want to make sure I understand. So the small groups, the Equal Advantage small groups are pulled from the same homerooms for the most part?
For the most part, yes.
But that retired teacher now has, there is a opportunity to collaborate with that teacher that they're serving.
Right.
That is
So-
built into this.
Right.
It was kind of like ad hoc last year, right? You know, do it if you want.
Yeah,
But
no, and
Emily
then there's
has-
some, where there might not be a pulled out group, but there were just some scheduling holes, and so we were able to have it pushed into classrooms too. So just to be, extra support. And I will say for fourth grade, speaking of the map depth, heavier supports are in those two classrooms, more scholars are being pulled, out of those rooms.
Okay.
Just as extra coverage.
Sounds very strategic.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to put it. Just food for thought, as just, you know, sharing my thoughts and my outside looking in. I'm trying to make really connection points with Dr. McDonald, as this is her year to get the bird's eye view, right? Dr. McDonald is seeing, you know, high level and just kind of, we're keeping the playbook as it's going, right? And this is a part of our playbook. I imagine knowing that, hey, this is not fiscally sustainable, right? This is not something that we can continue doing every year. We can't bank on that, right? We are grateful for the resources that have been provided, and we know that at the end of the day, our report card rating is going to carry the biggest weight, especially as we build out the technical high school to change hearts and minds, specifically with those that have the resources to provide. And so I imagine that Dr. McDonald is seeing that this is great, it's intentional, right? It's not fiscally sustainable. And how does she step back to really think about, with the collaboration of the DCIs, what is going to be the non-negotiable playbook for Tier 1 instruction? We've had a lot of conversations about Tier 1 instruction, and everybody at this table that has presented to you today knows what they would do in their classroom as a new kids, but we got to rally around this is what's going to be in that first year's teacher's classroom that Ms. Hatfield spoke about. This is what's going to be happening in the 20-year veteran teacher's classroom. Because if that's happening, we're going to have fewer to triage,
Well,
right?
consistency across the board. Yes. Gotcha.
And Mall campus is growing, right? And so they've got, you know, they're triaging 450 kids. And so, Emily, I know this is a lot to juggle and to put into motion. What I want to acknowledge, that the feedback that we've received is that it's happening 2 weeks earlier than before. We really didn't have this going until the first week of February last year. We had the meetings, kids identified, but, you know, and that takes a lot of work on Emily's part. And with our transition, the teacher transition, that Dr. McDonald is not going to step in to take over the transformational coaching load in second and third grade, so that teacherpreneur can now triage the fifth grade data in that one particular classroom. This is a big lift. It's a big lift. And so I'm excited to see, combined with the incentives that are going to be rolled out to scholars, to really focus on the growth piece. Right, the growth piece.
And I think that's huge. We've come to appreciate that our growth and proficiency is really what we're striving for. So, and I think your being at the elementary academy, second and third grade, those days during the week, and this is a huge lift, getting it on the ground and starting earlier and coordinating it so there's more interaction with the homeroom teacher. I think that's going to be huge.
I think too, just in some of the conversations that I've had with teachers, and the 2x2s that I've had, and just kind of popping in on some of the others, something that I noticed, because we have several teachers that are coming from upper grades, you know, moving over. And so just some of that, things to think about when you're doing the test is like, what is the class incentive? But also just the importance of being up and popping, and constantly circulating. And also, I mean, you can't help it if you're sick, but knowing that, hey, not being here makes a big difference in your data. So like, whatever you can to do to be in that room, you know, not going out for, you know, having to go get a drink, get a bathroom multiple times, like just staying in there and being intentional, it makes a big difference. I think it was a little bit eye-opening for some, not that the data was bad, but it wasn't as much growth as they wanted in some cases, and I think just seeing that and having to kind of discuss that with them.
Right, I love that, putting this in the, you know, yes, we want the teacher to push through and to come to these conclusions on their own, but it's also powerful to have this, bird's eye view.
Yeah.
I love the color coding of the scholars.
So, from the board's perspective, if whatever either of you need, to help support you the rest of the school year with these initiatives, I think this is really exciting, but, Jenny and I are prepared to take whatever argument we need to, or ask back to the board for support.
I mean, if you want to be a testimony, that's I'll be here before you.
Let me know.
I know.
But you just said that.
Yeah.
There we go.
We appreciate you very much.
Well, this is huge, and I also think that we'll be able to, at the end of the year, report back to our donors. This is how we invested that money, and these are the dividends it's paying off with the growth in our scholars, so.
You're not going to come visit and see you in action.
And what time? Okay, the days, it's,
Monday through Thursday.
okay, Monday through Thursday, and
They arrive at 8, but groups start at 8:30.
8:30.
And they go till 12.
Different. Rotating different small groups.
Yes, so, right now, most of them are all on the JA side, but I did make a shift in location today. I have moved the 2nd and 3rd grade teachers. We're not using the EA cafeteria right now until after the CLI visit, because we're setting up in there. They can move to the cafeteria later, but I've moved some tables in the hallway, I can walk so far. But the JA cafeteria mostly, and then the hallway outside of Miss Carlisle's former office, I've turned that into a little mini work room for them. So they have their own space. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, for your time.
This is,
Here.
yeah,
Thank y'all. Sorry for the delay. First day, working things out.
that was more important, to make sure it was getting off the ground, yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair, we will glide through the rest of these documents, really for information, because you'll get some more of this at the big board meeting, but moving into our mid-year organizational goals. It is our tradition in January, it's like drinking from a water hose, I know, but it's all of the data on all 16 of our organizational goals. And really happy to report that majority of them are on track. We have a few, of course, our proficiency is one, our million word reading challenge is not at 90%, it's at 81%. At one campus, 79% at the other campus, and that's the halfway point. When we look at all of the other organizational goals, all of them are on track, so you're looking at 2 that are off track. One is our big one, right? It's our reading and math proficiency. And so that's why we wanted you to have a next steps plan today from the DCI, so those are the proposals so far. At the big board meeting on Monday, there will be a state of the school presentation from the academy directors that captures their academy data and presents to you what are their next steps plans for any goal that is off track. But they're really going to go into their staff survey data. And so again, tied to our charter school growth fund investment, you have, and I know I sent all of this out, and Ms. Hanson had it in the board packet, but you have the big staff survey. So this is different. We've never done this before, right? I really encourage you to please take this and go, like, I know we send you a lot, but this is one thing to read top to bottom,
Yeah.
right? And so Dr. Madonna was a part of our 1 hour debrief with the Spark representative. We shifted from Great Place to Work, which was really a Google form, to measure staff sentiments twice a year. And now Charter School Growth Fund is paying for Spark. It's actually through South Carolina Children's Fund, but they're kind of connected. The Spark survey is very catered towards K-12 educators. And so, yeah, some of the numbers are not where our goal poster says, but if it's one takeaway that I got from the Spark survey coordinator is that, wow, compared to schools like you in the Charter School Growth Fund portfolio, right? That's what they're comparing us to. And then comparing us to the big network CMOs like Uncommon, Success, Achievement First. Hey, the lowest numbers are in the 70s. Wow, that's not that bad. And so there's going to be a pivot in our organizational goal because yes, we're at 89% overall satisfaction, but we are pivoting from getting to that 90% for the overall satisfaction to, hey, by campus, what are your 3 lowest domains? So if you look at page 38 in this packet, which is I believe your 3rd page, our lowest scoring domains network-wide, so across all 6 grade levels in network team, is the categories of belonging, outcomes, and growth and advancement. That's a little different by campus, right? But it's only off by 1 category,
Yeah.
which I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. And so we are shifting our goal to now, the stretch is, how do we bring up our 3 lowest scoring categories? So one new thing that we've never done before is that Sal and Leandre, not Trevor, not Hope, they are leading or have already led a focus group with identified members of their staff that are focusing on the data. Spark has prepared a whole presentation for them to use. They are using that focus group data to now, this week, they have a State of the School presentation that you all are getting on Monday, but they are rolling that whole thing out to each grade level team. And so it's kind of like, hey guys, here's where we are mid-year, and then here is what we learned from the staff survey. So yes, you input your responses, here is the response to the data that you input. And so really excited, we've not done something like that before, where number 1, it's led at the academy level, and there are focus groups, and then there's a rollout of a response to each grade level team. And so I encourage you to look at this. This breaks it down by affinity group, so you can look at responses by tenure, how long they've been at Liberty, race, gender, grade level, campus, and so a lot of good information in here that I encourage you to take a look at. We shared all the other data for each goal, down to our discipline data, to our family engagement data. Are there any questions with all the data that you received that I can answer by particular goal? Today we focused on reading and math proficiency. We are meeting lunch and breakfast participation, which is exciting. We've never met it at the midpoint in the school year. So both breakfast and lunch, we're meeting it. Our poverty number is on track. I know I shared at the last executive and governance meeting that we were in limbo with 10% of our poverty not being picked up with our new scholars in kindergarten. We have got that sorted out with the State Department of Education. And so we are at 70% with that. So that is the number that will be used for federal program designation. So Title I, all of that going forward, they would use this number. Of course, with our recent year-end giving of almost $100,000, that's year-end giving from just donors, and then our 2.18 commitment from YAS, we are on track to meet our fundraising goal for this year. Any questions? moving forward into staffing. So that's our focus going forward. Of course, you've got the big list that Dr. McDonald has alluded to with CFAs and Eagle Advantage, but now we're focused to looking ahead for next year with staffing, specifically at the mall campus. We have our intent to return surveys that have already gone out. We've only received three staff members' responses that they will not be returning for next year. And so we are moving forward with planning for those three. There actually is some next steps offer conversation happening right now for a new special ed teacher. And so we're on track with that. I have no concern. I think the biggest challenge, and you'll see it on my board update, my one pager, is the org chart structure at the mall campus is what our next biggest challenge in figuring out who is leading what. What's the oversight level, knowing that we're gonna have 450 kids on one side, the elementary academy fully built out, and we will have 300 scholars on the junior academy side. Amy, I believe that captures everything from here.
Okay.
From Mrs. Hanson. We do have our board satisfaction survey out, so if you have not taken that, please take it. We can get you set up on a laptop here if you need to, or you can do it right on your phone. Am I missing anything, Mr. Moore?
We're good.
Okay.
So if there's any suggestions for future agenda items, Ms. Chandler or Ms. Davis, please feel free to let me know. And I'll check with Ms. Douglas as well and Ms. Segerson. All right, so, recap any recommendations moving forward?
Yeah, we do have an action step that's been captured on looking at what is going to be our additional push for after school. So that's one action step we've captured from Ms. Chandler. With your permission, Ms. Chandler, we can schedule a time if you want me to go ahead and get some time as an action step for you to come in and observe Eagle Advantage like you did last year.
Yes.
I can do that. We can go ahead and have Ms. Hanson coordinate with you and any other members of the board that want to see what that investment looks like. The other action step that was not documented but has come up through other one-off communication is we have a big visit on Thursday. Big visit. Collective leadership. Kelly has led the charge on the CLI visit. Liberty was asked, so you went to the statewide conference and you kind of saw the vibe from the room about just how impressive the presentation was, right? Think about that, blown up on steroids. I will not be here Thursday, so I'm bummed that I will not be able to see it in action, but I know it is going to be, we have about 60 people coming to visit us from across the state of South Carolina, and the State Department of Education is coming. And so I'm really excited. I was telling the team this morning, we host visitors all the time. But this is a big visit because they have an opportunity to go back and to see, they're gonna see all the things that we do to collectively lead and learn in action. And so, really excited about that.
So, I know we have state folks, but the 60 other visitors, are they from other public
Other
charter
schools that are doing collective leadership, that are part of the cohorts, either just started or on the tail end. And so I think we're up to about 50 confirmed, but another school canceled, so I know the number's gonna go up. Ms. Davis has committed, so I think the action step would be if you are coming, please let us know because we can put you on the work plan. Awesome. Yes, so we have Ms. Chandler, Ms. Davis for sure coming. I know Ms. Cutoff is not able to come.
And you said 8:15?
8:15 is a good time to arrive. That we try to build in some buffer time for them. Their arrival is going to be around 8:30, and so you'll be able to. But hey, if you want to come in for morning arrival, come on in for morning huddle. I imagine some people will start arriving.
And you also wanted to check on the, grade floor?
Yes, yeah, we'll check on that. Ms. Knopf, are you able to take that as an action step to just confirm in Sumter School District what is the ceiling, the floor, if you will, for grade 6 and up? It is earned what the scholar earned,
Okay.
and K5 is the max is a 60, the lowest is a 60. I think the lowest K-12 is 60. Pretty sure the threshold is.
So like
The
lowest
lowest
grade they
grade.
can get.
Yeah. Pretty sure.
You know, a 50 is an F, anything below a 60 is an F. Okay.
And the grading, best practices in grading, homework guidance is being forwarded to governance to complete
Yes,
process.
we'll
Okay.
take that to the next, and Ms. Hanson, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a policy, so we are,
There's so many policies embedded in that
Mhm.
practice, so it'll go for,
so the recommendation is March. For, yeah, so we'll have this meeting and next meeting, and so, let us know if there's any suggestions that you have. If anybody wants to stay and watch our network tactical, you could stay and watch that, happening.
The meeting is adjourned.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Are we off?
not yet.